Okay. I hope that everything works here. Wait. Yes. So, good afternoon or evening or morning, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. The topic is the Bodhicaryavatara, which is basically the lifestyle of the Bodhisattvas. And so therefore, let's please all tune your motivation before we begin this session. Ideally, try to tune into the mind of Bodhisattvas, which is the generation of Bodhicitta, like wishing to attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Please do that by remembering, that there are countless beings who are suffering, countless beings who have fear and are, in difficult situations. So please generate that good heart and that big aspiration, to practice the Bodhisattva path, to study Shantideva's wisdom, and then contemplate on it, meditate on it, and then attain Buddhahood for the sake of all these beings. Yeah, please do that for a minute. Okay, thank you. So I see some new names here. So I will give a very short introduction, where we are in this book. But I think it also makes sense without much introduction, because we are on a very, important and applicable topic, which is vigilance. And I'm sure you have received teachings on this topic already. So I'm sure you can tune in easily. If not, please bombard me with questions. So we are studying here, as it's written here, a guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, the Bodhicaryavatara by Shantideva. And here, if we look at way, this could mean way like the path, but it also can mean like style, What is the mindset of Bodhisattvas, What is the style? What is their behavior? What is their attitude? What is their perception or their outlook? That is what we want to know here. And as we know from the teachings of Maitreya, that whatever the Bodhisattvas are doing is always within the parameters, of the two truths, the relative truth and the absolute truth. The relative truth, how things appear, in all their details, but then the absolute truth that describes more how things really are. And in the 9th chapter of Bodhicaryavatara, Shantideva is also saying that the absolute truth is not sort of in the domain of the mind, The absolute truth cannot be thought of, or cannot be conceptually conceived, and it cannot be measured. And so it's really beyond that relative framework that we normally have. But in order to actualize and realize that absolute truth, we need relative means and tools. And therefore, the first 8 chapters of the Bodhicaryavatara are the explanations of these tools or utensils to then be able to actualize the absolute truth. And so in the first 3 chapters, we generated bodhicitta, we took the bodhisattva vow, we practiced generosity. And then in the 4th chapter, we already started to talk about conscientiousness and mindfulness, which is like one of the most important factors to develop discipline. And we are now in the 5th chapter where we talk about vigilance, introspection, or also mindfulness is in it. That is the second factor, so that we have discipline. Then the other chapters are the other parameters, like patience, diligence, and meditation. And all these are explained, these first 5 parameters are the topic of the Bodhisattva training of these first 8 topics. And as I said, all these relative trainings, they're super important, but they are just a tool, a utensil, so that we can really see the absolute truth. That is more the aim or the result. Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche is saying, that especially when we talk about the relative training, and then in our context here, when we talk about discipline, that normally in the world, there's a lot of it is taken as a big deal, the discipline, and also it is used to judge others. For example, I don't know, in the Buddhist context, if somebody is very disciplined, maybe is super vegan and waking up like 4 o'clock in the morning, and doesn't take any drugs, doesn't drink alcohol, and so on, then that person is disciplined, and we immediately think he or she is a great practitioner. Or also, I mean, that is a little bit long time ago, but maybe like the Clinton and Monica Lewinsky situation, also there, people thought, okay, he doesn't have discipline, so therefore he can't be good. So we judge people quite quickly and too easily on discipline. And we forget that discipline is just a tool. And also like Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche once said, even if you look at the Nazis, the Nazis, they were very disciplined, but that alone shows discipline itself is not the solution, it can't be the main thing, obviously. So therefore, we should understand that discipline should be understood in its right place, within our path, within our training. So discipline is the tool, but not the result, But the tool is super important, Whenever we want to achieve anything, like on a relative level, also we need the discipline. Like if you want to be a good architect, of course you have to study all the different details, Or if you want to be a good barista, you have to know all the details of how to make coffee and the right temperature and the right beans and all of that, There's so many things, to generate that art of, I don't know, cappuccino making. And that is true, for all different jobs. Of course, if you are a nurse, then of course there are so many details you have to learn, and so much discipline and rules you have to follow. So therefore, on the relative level, discipline is super important, and that is the topic here of chapter 4 and 5. But then, from the perspective of the wisdom of the 9th chapter, then discipline is, of course, not the main thing. It is more the means to attain the result, the wisdom. And so, as I said earlier, the Bodhisattvas, they always have to balance relative and absolute truth. Of course, if we are getting dogmatic with our discipline, when we forget the ultimate truth, then the discipline becomes very dogmatic and very rigid, and as Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche says, then it becomes like a cause for constipation even, like it is getting so tight and everything becomes so solid and important. And therefore, we always have to balance it and always see like with a wisdom eye, we have to put things into perspective. And we have to understand that whatever is practiced or whoever is practicing or whatever we are practicing for, everything is sort of not really solidly inherently existent. So this dreamlike kind of understanding, the wisdom part has to be there, when we practice the discipline. And here in the Bodhicaryavatara context, we practice these qualities like mindfulness, conscientiousness, and vigilance in order to really become a bodhisattva, so that we are really able to benefit beings and that we are able also to attain complete enlightenment. That is the whole idea here. Okay. And this is explained here in chapter 5. And last time we already talked about the benefits of discipline, of vigilance actually, and the importance of it. And Shantideva used, I think, in the second verse of chapter 5, he was talking about this. Here it is, about this crazy elephant, as an example, maybe just we could look into that verse again, like our minds are understood as this crazy and mad elephants that are maybe even drunk, and then of course they can create so much harm. We are harming others, we are harming ourselves, and we create so much suffering and pain and confusion and chaos. And of course, that creates karmic imprints, and that might lead or will lead to future sufferings. So that is sort of the main reason why discipline is important, to keep us out of trouble and to simplify our lives. So discipline is not something that is a burden or a must or something that is forced upon us, but it is really something that is simplifying our lives, that is getting the priorities straight, in our practice. That is sort of the main thing to understand. And then, we discussed already the first 17 verses, and we would then come to verse 18. And in verse 18, here says, "This being so, I shall hold and guard my mind well. Without the discipline of guarding the mind, what use are many other disciplines?" So here Shantideva is saying, so if this is the case, what he said before, in the first 17 verses, what are the qualities of discipline, like a tamed, peaceful, simple, virtuous mind, and what are the disadvantages of not having discipline, like this mad, crazy elephant, then we understand that vigilance is the key, that it's so important to really guard our, or protect our mind, with discipline, or here in this context with vigilance. Then because if we don't have a guarded or protected mind, then our mind becomes very wild, and very scattered, and then actually no matter what other practices we do, if we recite mantras or prostrate or circumambulate or whatever we recite, is not really having a big impact, if our mind is not there. And therefore it is important, that taming the mind or guarding the mind is really the most important thing here. And this, of course, nobody else can do for us, This we know from Buddha's teachings, when he says he can only show the path, but he can't sort of travel or traverse the path for us, Or also Shantideva in his other text, Shiksa Muchaya, Shiksa Samuchaya is saying that it's only us who knows our mind stage, so therefore it's only us who has to apply the antidotes. And and that is really important, that it's about us, We have to take care of our own mind, It's really up to us. And of course, I hope you are all okay, like in this situation we have now, and of course there's a lot of fear or worry. Some friends emailed me today, that they are suffering because of fear, anxiety, because of this pandemic situation that we are in, and they're wondering, what Shantideva has to offer to that. And I think actually this is a very good topic here, this vigilance that we are talking about, because we of course acknowledge our fear and our anxiety and so on. But for that, we need also vigilance. First we need the vigilance here, which is like an introspection where we check the status of our body, speech, and mind. And here we check what is happening in our mind. So, for example, if there's fear, then that is first important to know. And then the second important step is then not to get entangled into it, and not getting carried away by it, and not nourishing it so that it's getting bigger and bigger, but to understand, after we apply the vigilance, the introspection, that we know, there's fear in our mind, that we then, in the next step, remind ourselves to then apply the antidotes. And one antidote could, for example, be the meditation, that the fear is there, but no need to get entangled into them, into these fears, and that we continue to do our practices. And as Khyentse Rinpoche said, this difficult situation at the moment is because we are sort of getting further and further away from the truth of like prajna paramita, the emptiness. So therefore, all our practices are aimed to get nearer to that prajna paramita, to this wisdom that sees the emptiness directly. So therefore, if we do our practices, I think that is just our best protection, whatever practice that may be. That is, of course, totally individual. I guess there's not one practice that is the most important, but I think the one that you feel most inspired to do, that is, I think, the best practice. And then, of course, we can, for example, if we have fear, I mentioned that because there were some emails today, then of course it is also good maybe then to keep our mind a little bit constrained, that, as I said earlier, that we don't nourish the fear that's not getting bigger. Either we do something positive like our practice or prayers or Tonglen, but we can also do something very light, watching some movies. I think Shantideva Rinpoche gave a nice list of movies that we could watch. What was it, like Sweet November or Groundhog Day? Groundhog Day. anyway, I have the list in case you want it. And that is definitely also a good thing. Mm. And then also, yeah, of course, as Bodhisattvas, we really care about the well-being of others. So Tonglen is definitely a good practice, and yeah, really trying not to be selfish and but responsible, you know, and for the sake of others also we try not to contract the virus and not to spread the virus. So there are so many things we can practice, and now we even have a little bit more time. You know, Kanto Rinpoche today sent a message, for example, that yeah, now maybe we have a little more time than usual, and maybe now we can do things what we always wanted to do. I mean, Atul Rinpoche even said, you know, like, yeah, you can arrange you can you can go through your collection of photos you have, you know, and rearrange them or whatever. You know, you can renovate your kitchen and you can work in the garden. I mean, there are so many things we normally can't do. We can read all the books we always wanted to read, or we can listen to music we always wanted to listen to. And Kanto Rinpoche said, yeah, also for our practice, you know, now we have more time, so we can really do our practice more slowly, you know, without any haste, you know, and we can really go into it. So that is definitely, I think, helpful advice. Oh, there are some messages. Okay. Yeah, there's no question in it. And of course, please always bring also the absolute truth aspect into it, you know, and remember that everything we perceive is definitely a projection of the mind, you know. It is, and nothing is really solid, so everything is workable, you know, everything is dreamlike. But nevertheless, and that is sort of the bridge to the next verse, we should be super careful, of course. And here Shantideva is actually talking, still, I mean, still in the context of inspiring us to be vigilant. He is here showing us, you know, with the example of our body, which is maybe weak, that we also have like how we are careful and very vigilant in regards to our body that is weak. So likewise, we need to be vigilant with our mind, who's our real soft spot, sort of. So here, Shantideva is saying, just as I would be attentive and careful of a wound when amidst a bustling, uncontrolled crowd, so I should always guard the wound of my mind, dwelling harmful people. Okay, so here, verse 19. I mean, that is very clear, right? The general idea here that Shantideva is saying, you know, if you have like a wound somewhere, you know, that is very sore, of course, and then if you go to a party, let's say, you know, like a wild, whatever, heavy metal party where everybody is drunk, many people are there, of course you are super careful not that nobody is headbanging you, you know, or is running into your wound, you know, because that would be very painful. And of course, that we can totally now apply to our present situation, you know. You know, for example, if you have a little bit of weak body because you're maybe immunosuppressed, you know, or you have whatever disease, you know, and then if you now with this COVID-19, you know, if you now go out, you know, and if there's a crowd, you keep your social distancing, you know, you try to, be careful that nobody's coming too close to you, especially if it's like an uncontrolled wild crowd, you know. So you try to be extra careful. And nowadays, you know, you try to really distance yourself from others. You try to isolate, you know. And Yeah, the good thing is even like our politicians even ask us to do retreats, so that is actually good. So that is what we should do, and that is how we should act, And so when we go out nowadays, of course, we need that vigilance to be really careful, regarding our body, speech and mind. It is said, and here now with the virus, of course, with our body, that what we touch, and whom we are close to, and all of that, So that is super important, and that is what is meant here by Shantideva. And then Shantideva is saying, if we are so careful, when it's about our body, and because our body has a soft spot, a wound or maybe a receptivity for the virus, then even more, you should guard your own mind, because the mind is your real soft spot, and there you should guard or protect your mind in the midst of this controlled crowd, this harmful people here, because they might trigger some emotions in us. That is the main idea, of Shantideva here, we should be very vigilant, with our mind here, as vigilant or even more as we are with our body when we are sick or when we're having a wound or when there's a virus going on. So likewise here, we should be so vigilant with our mind when we are among harmful people. And harmful people doesn't mean so it's in Tibetan it's actually bad people, that is not necessarily like a bad person in itself, but it means that somebody who is like triggering negative emotions in us, and that has not much to do with that person out there, but it has to do with ourselves, So if there's a person who's triggering anger or hatred in us, that is then the moment where we have to guard the wound of our mind. There is where we have to protect that soft spot of ours. And of course, also a harmful person in the sense of somebody who's triggering negative emotions in us could be also a super sexy person, because that super sexy person is triggering so much lust or desire in our mind, and therefore there also we need to guard our mind with this vigilance. And nowadays, in the times of social media, this doesn't even have to be a person in front of us, It could be like a person like on the other side of the globe, who is maybe writing whatever offensive comment to our Facebook post, or maybe and that triggers negative emotions in us, or maybe I don't know, or maybe is not answering our or not liking our Facebook post, and then we feel offended, or is not writing any message, and then we feel offended or second best or forgotten. So there can be so many reasons and ways and people that could be classified as harmful people. But as I said, it's never about the person out there, it is always about our reaction to them, so here it means really like whatever situation is creating negative emotions in us, whenever we are in those situations, then we should guard our mind, then we should be super mindful and vigilant, and that, of course, yeah, as I said, it's really like it really depends on us. Maybe in some situations for us, it's then the only chance is then to avoid those situations that trigger negative emotions in us. Let's say that is more the Shravakayana way, but in other situations, maybe we are more brave, and then we can even stay in that triggering situation. But we can do so because we have so much vigilance and mindfulness and alertness in our mind that our emotions don't go wild, even though we are maybe with a person who normally makes us totally angry or totally desireful or totally jealous, you know. So that is really like we have to check, you know. Also for that we need introspection, you know, or vigilance. So we need to check what is the best response to a specific difficult or triggering situation or person, and what am I able to do at the moment, you know. Do I have to leave and run away, which is totally fine, or can I stay but still guard my mind? And I think also in this verse there's also implicitly, it's a nice advice also for Sangha, I think. I think a good Sangha person, you know, like a spiritual friend or colleague, should be somebody who is not triggering negative emotions in you, you know, who's not stimulating negative emotions, but who is sort of triggering the opposite, you know, who's inspiring you, or who's making you more compassionate, or more or less confused, you know, or more courageous, or less afraid. So that, I think, is also could be implicitly understood. Wangchuk's reply. Okay. Okay, now I think you are back, all of you. Thank you for letting me know. I also didn't get the message because apparently there was no internet for a short time. Okay, I just repeat what I wanted to say. Yeah, so it's really about guarding or protecting our mind, you know. And and I wanted to say, like Gachen Rinpoche or Kenshin Kunga Wangchuk Rinpoche, you know, I like their examples, you know, because when His Holiness the Dalai Lama asked Kenshin Kunga Wangchuk, who was imprisoned, you know, for 20 or something years in Chinese prison, His Holiness asked Khenpo Kunga Wangchuk about his greatest fear during that time, and Khenchen Kunga Wangchuk said, "Yeah, my greatest fear was to lose my compassion with these Chinese people, you know, who are torturing us and who are imprisoning us." So that is, I think, a great example, of being vigilant and mindful and having that introspection, because you understand, yes, definitely these are like harmful people in the definition what Shantideva is using here. So these normally would create like or trigger anger in our mind, and hatred and all of that. And Khenpo Kunga Wangchuk is was such a great practitioner that he managed really actually to stay, I think, 23 years in prison there without ever getting angry with them, I mean, he obviously couldn't leave the situation, so the only protection was for him to have that vigilance and introspection and compassion and wisdom, of course. So he applied these methods, and therefore he could stay in this harmful situation, but with such a protected mind that he never got angry, but was compassionate with these torturers. Okay, that was a long explanation to verse 19, and there are, I think, 2 or 3 questions. Here's one. A disciplined person somehow seems rigid to others, even though they might not actually be so. Is it possible to have an attitude of being joyous and compassionate while also be disciplined? Yes, definitely. I mean, also you are your own judge. You should see, if you are if your discipline makes you rigid or not. Definitely that you can judge best. So therefore, how others perceive you might is only like a guest job. You can't really read your mind. So therefore, for your own sake, that is important that you understand, that you have that vigilance, this introspection to see if your mind is getting too tense and everything becomes too solid. And yes, that is the idea, because say joyous and compassionate while being disciplined. I think all the teachers do that. They are really disciplined, and their discipline, of course, the biggest part of their discipline is that they are compassionate and loving, and but then they are also because they balance the discipline with the ultimate view, of emptiness. Therefore, everything is becoming lighter. Everything has like a light touch. Nothing is so super important. Nothing is so solid. And everything is more playful, and that's why they're also much more joyous when being disciplined. So they have a really relaxed discipline. And as I said earlier, that is sort of always the heart of the Bodhisattva training, to balance these 2 truths. It's like, I think, like Guru Rinpoche is saying, that on the one hand side, our view should be as vast as the sky, like understanding the great emptiness of all phenomena, and therefore resting in great simplicity. How Shantideva puts it in verse 34 of chapter 9. Having that, but at the same time, in union with that, as Guru Rinpoche said, then our actions should be as minute and detailed, as barley flour. So on the relative level, every detail is important. On the absolute level, nothing is really so important, but then on the relative level, every little detail is important, and we should be so super careful with everything we do and don't do. And I think if we really do that, look maybe contradictory at glance, but if we are able to balance these 2, then yes, I think then we become a very joyous and relaxed and happy, disciplined person. Okay, there's another one by Medya asking about how to apply antidote of fear, which is courage, when my mind is surrounded with lots of fear and worry. yeah, this is what I tried to say earlier. You know, first it's very important to acknowledge, you know, the fear, and also to not beat yourself up that you have the fear. You know, for example, now, yes, I think it's sort of human and to a different degree, maybe even necessary and good that we are afraid. But then it's a matter of dosage, you know. Then of course the fear should not occupy our whole mind, you know. Therefore, we should not read too much on the internet that could nourish our fear. But then on the other hand, we don't want to be ignorant, so therefore maybe have some few good sources that we read to be updated about the situation. So therefore, that is sort of like the middle way approach, I think, where our fear is also not getting too big because of so many fake news, you know, and so many wrong informations that we might get. So that is definitely important. And then if we have the fear in general, then, as I said, yeah, it's good to acknowledge it, but then also leave it. I mean, not nourish it, and also not actually trying to get rid of it. But yeah, but it's there. But then you focus on something. You know, we focus on compassion, or we focus on our practice, or we watch a nice movie, or I don't know. We create some nice things. So then we occupy our mind, you know, with something else, which is not having side effects. That is important. So of course, practice, recitations, and so on can be very helpful. But it doesn't have to be always that, you know. It can also be very worldly things that are free of side effects, and that can also then then our mind can be filled out with that, and then fear doesn't have too much space. And then, of course, compassion is always a good antidote against fear, you know, because fear is more focused on yourself, and compassion then is more focused on others. So that is also a good antidote. And then also it's maybe also good to remember the Buddha nature, you know, that deep down, but of course not really down and not really deep, but but sort of in reality, we are Buddhas, you know. And in reality, nothing can really harm us, and also nothing can really help us, actually. I mean, we know that from the Heart Sutra, right? No attainment and no non-attainment, you know. So and if we remember that, you know, that we are Buddha by nature, you know, just temporarily, that truth is sort of obscured. But that this Buddha nature is the perfect Buddha, you know, with all the 10 fearlessnesses and powers, and 27 aspects of wisdom, and or Vajrayana, the 5 wisdoms, and all of them are totally there already. They're just covered, you know, like whatever diamond in the mud, you know, just covered, but it's so uncoverable, you know, and the diamond is totally not what is it, damaged by the mud, you know. The diamond is undamageable and the mud is removable. That is the best news, I think. And then everything else is sort of not so important then, you know, if you have trust in that truth, you know, and that essence or nature of ours. And from that point of view, yes, of course, there was never mud, there was never an obscuration, and therefore there is no attainment, because there is nothing to attain, it's perfectly there. So anyway, so that I think is also a good way to have that courage, or to have that carelessness in difficult situations, because carelessness in a good way, that equanimity, because we have that indestructible Buddha nature. Okay, there's one more question. How we can handle a mind who has created so much expectations in something and then will not be done? How we can tame that behavior? Expectations is always a big thing, and unfortunately, we have these 8 worldly dharmas, and expectations are half of them. We expect this and this and that for, and we are afraid of this, that, and that. Okay. So basically, the 8 worldly dharmas are hope and fear, or expectation and aversion or something. So and being free of expectation or hope is really only possible at the state of a Buddha. So in other words, my first point is, unfortunately, this will last a little bit, this frustration. But as Jigme Khyentse Rinpoche said, it's good to remember, that the more expectation you have, the more frustration you will get, Without any expectation, of course, you cannot be frustrated. So therefore, it's good, I think, to remind yourself of the beauty or the advantages of expectationlessness. I think that is important. And then another part is, expectation is hope or actually desire, or attachment to something that you didn't get. Maybe you didn't get the job you wanted, or you didn't get the attention you wanted, or you didn't get the reply to a message you wanted. And that is the frustrating thing, because you were attached to getting the job, or what was your second example? I forgot. Or thirdly, you were attached to getting the answer or the reply to a message. And again, that is understandable because we are in a desire realm, so that is still our most important or dominant factor. And there, it's important then, of course, to let go. But then also it is tricky. I don't know if you have that in your language. In German, we say something like that. If the grapes, the grapes are hanging too high, then the fox is making himself believe that the grapes are sour. So important is here, just because we don't get something, our strategy should not be to try to perceive that what we didn't get as something bad, I hope that makes sense. Okay, and another point is, if it's a person, that is not fulfilling your expectations, then all of that, what I said earlier, is of course directed to a practitioner. So this practitioner should not try to find the blame in the person that is not fulfilling my expectations. But as a practitioner, we always try to find, we should drive all blames into one, in ourselves. But if if the situation is because another person is not fulfilling your expectations, then maybe it's also good to ask that person, and try to understand that person and try to understand the situation of that person, why that person is maybe not giving you the job or not the attention or not the reply you wanted. And understanding is always the best, I think many teachers say that compassion comes because of understanding, and so if you understand the situation of the other person, maybe she or he is suffering a lot, maybe she or he just lost a good friend who died, or maybe she or he is super busy because of working in a hospital, and fighting the virus or whatever, so then sort of the expectations easily can collapse, and you understand that it's nothing personal, but it's the other person couldn't fulfill your expectations because there were just very important other things that happened. I don't know, there are so many things to look at it. But as a practitioner, and I know you are one, yeah, that is the main thing is your mind here, and that is of course Shantideva's approach, please understand that expectations harm only you, and as an extension of you being harmed, also your relationship to that situation or that person. And so therefore, for your own sake, try not to have expectation, but try to, whatever you get, see it more as a present, like a gift, but never expect anything. Yeah, Dimitri, I think you're right. That's Aesop's fable about the fox and the grapes. And last thing about the expectation, yeah, and again, it's the same thing, being vigilant and seeing that expectation, and then, like everything what I said earlier with the fear, don't nourish it, don't give it too much space, apply antidotes, do other things, all that, don't get entangled in it. But of course, don't suppress it, don't express it, don't somatize it, but just notice it, but then don't do anything with it, it will dissolve. It's not a big deal. Okay, dears, I think we talked only about 2 verses today. so let's go to the third one, which is still in line with the 19th. So we are still talking about the wound. And if I'm careful of a wound through fear of it being slightly hurt, why do I not guard the wound of my mind through fear of being crushed by the mountains of hell? And so the idea here is, why? Okay, let's use the COVID-19 example. So why are we, if we have like a low immune system, or if we are like a risk patient, so why are we so careful with our body? Because we don't want to suffer, we don't want to have that sickness of the virus, That's why when we go out in the crowd, we are so careful. And therefore, we keep practicing social distancing, or if we cannot avoid it, we try, we try to be super careful, whom we touch, whom we are breathing in with, sort of, who is in front of us, and so on, and so and to do all that, it is written here in the first 2 lines, because we are afraid that we get hurt. Here, slightly hurt, that makes sense in what Shantideva has to say afterwards, because he said, basically, the slightly hurt in the sense of the worst thing that can happen to you, in this situation with your body, is that your body is in pain, and okay, the worst situation is you're dying. Of course, that is terrible, but that does happen, and we have done that so often. So that's why it's slightly hurt, it's just maximum this life. That's the worst effect, that it can have. And that, from a sort of multi-life vision of Shantideva, is a slight pain only, but but here the other 2 lines then talk about the mind, our biggest soft spot, sort of, This is even much more important to protect and to be careful about the mind. Why? Because it's not only getting slightly hurt, but the consequences might be over many, many lives, So if we don't protect our mind, and then we get, let's say, the mental virus, which are the kleshas, the negative emotions, then because of these negative emotions, we have all these things, we have fear, we have expectation, we have jealousy, we have anger, and so on. And that creates so much actions, and that creates so much negative karma, and that creates so much results. And since the result is very fair or loyal, or what is it? In the same style as the cause, or the result of all these actions will be suffering. And then, and that can happen in many, many, many lifetimes to come. That is the point here. For example, you might be reborn in hell and be crushed by mountains then, So that is the point here. There are so many long-lasting consequences, of our negative emotions. They can spoil and ruin many, many, many of our future lives, and can by that postpone our Buddhahood for so long time, which is a pity. It's really a pity, because there may be many, many beings, for example, in Chile, and you are living in Chile, who are waiting for you to be a Buddha, and they want to be your disciples. They need to be your disciples. Or maybe if not Buddha, then maybe you're living in India, and okay, there are many Rinpoches are there, but still, maybe you don't become a Buddha, but with less negative emotions, you become a great Bodhisattva, and therefore you can benefit so many beings around you, wherever you are. And so therefore, these negative emotions are much more harmful than a virus can ever be. Sort of. That is Shantideva's logic here. But of course, Shantideva knows. I'm pretty sure he knows, how much physical suffering we can have. He's not denying that, And again, this is talking to practitioners here, So therefore, important is to not to guard our minds and which means also not to give in to fear or give into expectations, you know. And then if the virus comes or whatever illness, and if we suffer or if we die from that, yes, it's tragic, but that is not the end, you know. But then it is ended. You know? Look, I mean, the disease is gone, you know. But if we have negative emotions, then the results can be not endless, of course, but there can be many more results and much more suffering in many future lives. Yes, I think so. Therefore, guarding the mind is so important. Also, in the Abhidharma teachings, it is often said, you know, like, I don't know, I heard like 80% is mind-made. You know, like there's actually so little suffering we have, like physically. You know, like I'm speaking of maybe most of us here. Of course, I'm sure there are some who have physically a lot of suffering, but generally we have on a material level, we are actually quite well. But then our mind puts so much suffering on top of it, you know. And of course, also Gampopa is saying that, you know, like when you have a disease, you know, then there's so much mental suffering that comes to it, or other sufferings on top of it, you know, because you're afraid that it's deadly, or you are afraid of the painful diagnostics that have to be done. Or I think he also said, Gampopa said also, you're afraid of the bill the doctor will give you, you know, because it's too high. So many things, you know, and so there's so much extra suffering, of course. But many of sufferings you can also work with because they're merely mental. That is the main point here of Shantideva, you know. Yes, some things we can't avoid. And this is also true now in the virus situation, you know. We have to differentiate, you know. That's again, I think, the sobriety prayer, right? I think I mentioned it last time. There are many things we cannot change at the moment, you know. Like, yes, there's the virus. Yes, we have to be in lockdown. Yes, we have to be careful. And yes, maybe friends are getting sick and so on, you know. This we cannot avoid. So we have to accept that, you know. And of course, we send our prayers and everything. But then there are many other things we can change in our mind, you know, our attitude, our strength, our courage, our fearlessness, our compassion. There are so many things we can change. And so that needs to be our focus. That is, I think, Shantideva's take on the whole situation. Okay, now comes, please, the women, please don't run away when you read this translation. But it's a correct translation. Verse 21. Should I behave in such a way as this, then whether among harmful people or even in the midst of women, the steady effort to control myself will not decline. So here a little bit we learn about the benefits of this guarding the mind. So should I behave like this or in such a way here means if I am vigilant and if I'm not under the control of negative emotions, then no matter if we are among gangsters or girls, we will keep our mental peace, you know, and our mental strength. I think I already explained it earlier, you know. So harmful people or women, actually, according to Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche, they are here is similar, you know, like in the sense that Shantideva is talking to monks. And therefore, harmful people are those who trigger anger in me, and women are those who trigger lust or desire in me. So that is sort of the point. It really goes without any saying, you know, if you are a homosexual monk, then you have to replace women with men here. But if you're a heterosexual woman or nun, which is also a woman, of course, then you also have to say men. And if you're a lesbian woman, you have to say woman. So, so in other words, whoever or whatever, there are so many varieties and fluidities nowadays and fetishes nowadays. So the idea here is whoever makes you horny, basically, you know, whoever triggers desire in you, you know, you can keep your calm mind or coolness even if you are with them. That is the idea. And the same goes also whoever is harming you, whoever creates normally anger in you. If you have your mind properly protected by vigilance, no problem, you can stay with them. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If it still sounds, what is it, misogynist, please let me know. We really need to discuss on it. But it just means these two lines, third and the second and the third is the same as earlier, you know, whoever or whatever. So it says, first line, if I control my mind and am not a victim of my kleshas and my negative emotions, then whoever or whatever triggers whatever negative emotion in me, I don't care. You know, I will still have my vigilance and, let's say, my meditation intact. And yeah, women, as I said, is just an example for anybody who normally sexually desires a woman. That's it. Okay. And yeah, as I said earlier, if one is not able to do so, then it's better to keep a distance. You know, then monks stay in the monastery and so that they are not tempted by women, and nuns stay in the nunneries to not be tempted by men, if all of them are heterosexual. And so that is a good method. But if your mind is totally tamed or guarded or protected, you don't have to distance yourself from anyone or anything that could trigger desire or aggression in you. Okay. Then, if there's no debate, then let's go to 22nd. Yeah, and here Shantideva is saying that protection of mind is really the most important thing, you know. And everything else is really secondary. You know this. Here it's written, it is better to be without wealth, honor, body, and livelihood. It is better to let other virtues deteriorate rather than ever to let the virtues of the mind decline. So here, you know, normally Dotoko is usually saying, you know, and I like that a lot. We are always looking for the next thing, you know, the next iPhone, the next whatever, the next meal, the next partner. And that is like an endless suffering we have. Anyway, and therefore, if we don't get any next thing, and if we even lose what we have, our honor, our possession, our body, our respect, our food, our clothes, you know, and even our virtues of body or speech, you know, no problem. Shantideva here is saying that is all secondary, and that is actually connected to this 8 worldly dharmas that I mentioned earlier, you know, this hope and fear. So the only main thing here in this context is the mind training. So therefore here the only focus should be not let our mind go wild, you know, or not lose our mind, or that our mind degenerates. You know, this is meant here in the last line. That is really the only thing that we, okay, in the terms of this chapter, that we really keep our vigilance or introspection or carefulness intact. That is more important than losing our body or honor or livelihood. Why? Because a tamed and protected mind is the main thing what we want to achieve here, you know. This is the base for compassion. This is the base for bodhicitta, you know. This is the base for a good heart, you know. This is the base for being a successful bodhisattva, you know. Successful in the sense of, you know, if the bhumis are like a career of the bodhisattvas, you know. So that we become the big boss in the end, you know, the Buddha. Of course, that sounds egoistic, but I hope you know what I mean. So, so Shantideva is really stressing that, you know, the tamed mind, the guarded, protected mind, that is most important, you know, and not getting spaced out or mindless or wild or bizarre in our mind. And then Shantideva is praising even anybody who is fortunate enough, you know, to want to protect their own mind and who is able to do so. Oh, you who wish to guard your minds, I beseech you with folded hands, always exert yourselves to guard mindfulness and alertness. Yeah, so that is a big point here. You know, like the mind, if we don't have vigilance or mindfulness, yeah, then the mind can easily go wild, can easily go off, can easily be scattered. Therefore, we need this mindfulness and we need this alertness or introspection or vigilance, you know. And Shantideva here is really folding his hands, not because we are so respectable. I'm quoting Khyentse Rinpoche here. It's not because he thinks we are so great practitioners, but he is folding his hands because that is the crucial point, you know, to really protect and watch our mind. And now I said watch, you know, it's the same as introspection or vigilance, and it's the same. We talked about it last time, I think, session in Tibetan, and that is the same thing that also the Dzogchen people also talk about, you know, this just watching, you know, watching the mind. That is so important. And that is the key point here, you know. So mindfulness and alertness or introspection are therefore the one to be practiced here. And mindfulness, again, just to remind you, I think last time or before, I think in the 4th chapter, we talked about that a lot. You know, mindfulness is that we are mindful about what to do and what to avoid. That is the definition here. It also has mindfulness, Drempa in Tibetan, has also the thing of remembrance, you know. So we remember what to do and what to not to do. And then vigilance is then more like checking body, speech, and mind if we act accordingly to what to do and what not to do. So these two factors are super important. Okay, we still have 12 minutes. So maybe go into one more verse. Actually, I was thinking today, because next week, the last week was super busy for me, but next week I have more free time. So I might do another session, but maybe just a question and answer session would be fun, to discuss with everyone who wants, without any text. But let's see. And because Khyentse Rinpoche really thinks we are all at home anyway. So we should practice and study. And I always like to discuss. Okay, 24 is now talking about that, of course, compassion. You always have to understand that whatever topic the Buddhists talk about, they're always selling it as the most important thing at that time, And here, Shantideva wants to sell Shantideva wants to sell the idea of vigilance and protecting the mind and watching the mind, So therefore here in the next verses, 24 to 28, here Shantideva is talking about the side effects of not having this vigilance, of not having that introspection. And so in the next 24, 5, 6, 7, 8, in the next 5 verses, he's praising vigilance so much and saying that is the most important thing. And because if you don't have it, your actions will be weaker, or you will not be able to develop wisdom, or you will not keep your discipline, or already accumulated merit will be destroyed, or no future merit will be accumulated, So that is what is happening the next 5 verses. But I think we can go into the first one, 24th. People who are disturbed by sickness have no strength to do anything useful. Likewise, those whose mind are disturbed by confusion have no strength to do anything wholesome. So again, Shantideva is using our experience that we have with our body when it's dysfunctional, to compare it, with our mind, to show that our mind is also like dysfunctional at the moment or weak. And so here the first 2 lines, when it's about the body, it's sort of no matter, if we are clever, young, beautiful or not, but if we get any sickness, then you become sort of useless, like you maybe lay in bed all the time, you can't even speak properly anymore, you can't go to work anymore, you can't even maybe lift a table anymore. I mean, in the case of the virus, you might be not even able to breathe alone anymore, maybe you can't hold your body fluids anymore. So we don't have any strength anymore, if our physical body is getting sick and disturbed. And likewise, Shantideva is saying, if our mind is getting sick, and sick here is a samsaric mind state, So, so if your mind is in the samsaric mind state, even though you are maybe intelligent also, you know, and very smart, but if you're in samsaric mind state and don't have this vigilance or introspection or mindfulness, then your mind becomes very scattered and disturbed, you know, by ignorance, and then we don't have any chance really to see properly what is good to do and what is what we should better avoid, you know, what actions. Mm. So we normally have these 10 virtuous actions and the 10 non-virtuous actions. I'm sure you know them, you know, the 3 of body, 4 of speech, and 3 of the mind. And that is normally what we should adopt, the virtuous actions, and we should avoid the 10 negative actions. And and if we are confused and full of negative emotions, then they unfortunately become very secondary to us, and we are not really following them. So therefore, it is so important to have that protected mind and that vigilance. And then also here in verse 25, this is the second point here. The second side effect, if we don't have vigilance, is that we're not really accumulating wisdom, you know. Whatever has been learned, contemplated, and meditated upon by those whose minds lack alertness, just like water in a leaking vase, will not be retained in their memory. So, for example, we have received many teachings, you know, and we were sitting there, and maybe even during the time of the teachings, we were sort of focused, but then maybe even in the teachings, or maybe often only afterwards, then, you know, we have this this mind, you know, that is not protected, but it's wandering and distracted and wild and even forgetful, and not really here but always there, and not really now but always in the past or future. Then that is not a good vessel for wisdom, you know. Our wisdom will be very limited, you know, or short-lived, and therefore and therefore forgotten, you know. And that is here the idea also with this vase. I'm sure you remember that like in Pato Rinpoche's book Words of My Perfect Teacher, in the beginning it talks about the 3 defects of a pot, where you have how one should listen to teachings and so the upside down pot, I think, was if one is very arrogant or proud, you know, then the Dharma cannot be poured into you. And then we have the dirty pot, and when you put the pure Dharma into you, then it becomes very the Dharma also becomes dirty, sort of, you know, or hijacked by your selfish agendas. And then also we have this leaking vase or leaking pot, you know, where there are many holes. And then, whatever you fill in will last for a while, but then it will just disappear, you know. So that is here also the example, you know. We don't have memory, you know. Memory, as I said earlier, is actually the same as mindfulness, you know. We lose the things, you know. We forget the things. And so therefore, really accumulation of wisdom is not possible, because the wisdom only stays for a while, but then it's leaking, it's leaving our mind. Okay, maybe we stop here today. I can't talk anymore. And so where is it? 25. Okay, at least some verses. Thank you, Dimitru. Medya, you're saying, can you elaborate more about our mind can hijack Dharma? Yes. I mean, you can always use Dharma in the wrong way. Like I think Atisha said that Dharma should be used as a mirror. You look at the Dharma book, for example, this wonderful book, or this one. This is very special to me. We study it here at the moment for 3 months. Of course, the other too. So these books. So we look into the books, and we should see them as a mirror. That they show us what is happening in our mind, and they show us what we can apply in our mind, what our problem is, and what the antidotes are. And and that is important. And but we should not use the Dharma as a window, where we look out at other people and then see, oh yeah, he is jealous, she is having expectations, and she is angry, and he has too much desire, and he is lying, and he is stealing, and so on. So there we would not use the Dharma in the way as it was meant to, which is to train our mind to become more selfless. But we use the Dharma to solidify our ego and become more judgmental about others. And then also, we can even, I don't know, use the Dharma as a jargon, like, I think it's easy in a relationship, if you are in a relationship with somebody and then, maybe we can use, okay, let's use 2 examples. So if I do something wrong and then my partner is complaining, and so she's saying, that was not fair that you did it, or whatever, and then I say, oh, that is your projection, So I just use a Dharma term, but turn it around and apply to her, instead of applying it to myself. Or for example, if my partner is saying, it's so frustrating to be with you because I don't know, you never have time, or you never listen, or you don't show interest, you don't say nice things. If then I say, that is only your expectations, and that I always use the Dharma to blame the other person, that is, I think, hijacking the Dharma. And that is totally missing the point, because in the Lojong teachings, the 7 points of mind training, there's one nice slogan, and Trungpa Rinpoche was translating it as drive all blames into one, which means whatever happens, whatever I have difficulties, it's because I should understand. I should not like jargon wise only, but I should really think it through and hopefully come to the conclusion it is because I'm selfish, But I should never point that out to somebody else as a practitioner, but only towards myself. Okay, I hope that answered a little bit the question. And let's really do like a question answer session or discussion session next week about whatever topics. And thank you all for your patience and attention. And please, please take very good care, in your rooms, use it as a great retreat. Practice, don't get paranoid. But of course, it's understandable if those feelings come. but concentrate on your practice, concentrate on fun things, on compassion. And if you go out, apply all these vigilant and careful advice here by Shantideva, and follow really the good rules of social distancing, hand washing, disinfection, not touching your face, especially mouth, nose, and eyes, even if it's itchy. And yes, Dimitri, all questions are allowed next week. Yeah, so please take very good care. And if there was anything beneficial in this session, please dedicate that merit to all sentient beings. And yeah, thank you so much, and bye-bye.